The NBA is always going to showcase its stars. They're the most exciting ones. They put up the biggest highlights. They're the ones that put up big numbers. They're the driving force on and off the court for the league. However, role players are important too. As somebody that just saw his team win an NBA title, I can tell you that with confidence. Role players are also evolving the same way stars are over the years, and I think Ausar Thompson is the biggest example of that. The 5th overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft by the Detroit Pistons is a versatile wing with tools you just can't teach. And I want to talk about how Ausar Thompson is kind of breaking the game as a role player. But quickly before we go any further, if you're new and like basketball, I'd really appreciate if you would like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, notified whenever I release a video. I have big videos about basketball, and if you enjoy basketball, I really think you're going to enjoy my content, and doing all those things are the best way to let YouTube, but more importantly myself, know that you enjoy the content so I can make more of it in the future. Anyways, let's talk about Ausar Thompson, and a good place to start would be his physical and athletic tools. He's 6'7", 215 pounds with a 7-foot wingspan. That's ideal size for an NBA wing, and he's also one of the best athletes in the NBA, and he has very few peers. In fact, I think the only pure athlete that's confidently better than him in that regard is his twin brother. He has vertical explosion and range that doesn't make sense. His ability to get to his peak and stay there on a jump doesn't seem possible. His second jump is more impressive than even most athletes' first jump. He has burst, quickness, and speed that you usually only find in smaller guards, combined with a strength and physicality to his game that most with his level of speed and quickness don't come close to either. He doesn't just check off every box athletically for an NBA wing. He's 99th percentile in almost all of those boxes, and it shows in his rim scoring. He's shooting 66.9% at the rim on 5.2 attempts per game. And while he doesn't have much of a jumper, and I do think it limits his ceiling in the overall grand scheme of things, when it comes to the question of if he can be a good player or not, I don't think it really matters, especially when it's so hard to contain, because it's something that nobody outside of a handful of players can match up with athletically. Because he's so quick and fast, and he's also so strong and physical, you really don't have many guys that can handle what he can do. In fact, one of the only ones that can do it is his twin brother, who in my opinion is the best pure athlete in the NBA. Ausar has a great combination of off-ball play and on-ball ability. 66.3% of his rim attempts are assisted on, which suggests he's a guy who mostly plays off the ball but can handle on-ball driving reps, making him a versatile player that can play next to a star like a Cade Cunningham, be a secondary rim pressure threat to make it a bit easier for Cade, and also be a complement as a roll man and cutter. But where the athleticism will always stand out the most for me is his game in transition. He has unreal speed in the open floor that makes him a nightmare to contain. He has a functional enough handle to be a grab and go guy. He can run past defenses, he can run through defenses, he can drive with the basketball in his hands, but he's also a luxury off the ball in transition. Because he's so athletic, you can throw it to spots where only he can catch it. Throw it a bit further ahead of a play because of his speed, and he can catch up to it before the defender can. Throw it to an area on the court when it comes to a rim run or a lob that only he can catch it at because he's so athletic. And on top of that, he's also a really good passer in transition, which leads into the fact that he's a really good connecting playmaker. In fact, I believe he's the ideal connecting playmaker. He has the athleticism to put pressure on the rim, he has good feel and vision, he makes the right reads, he keeps his head up in transition, he can make that extra pass, he doesn't slow down offensive flow either. I never feel like when he gets the basketball in his hands, he's going to stop and the offense is going to stall. He's either going to make a drive or make a read, and that's really valuable to have, especially with a Pistons team that's winning right now. He doesn't have the high-end primary playmaking upside and tangibles that his brother does, in my opinion, but this is still a very positive aspect of his game. he may never average big assist numbers. In fact, he's not averaging that many assists per game through his first 2 seasons. He may be a 2 to 3 assists per game player, but he reminds me a lot of Robert Williams when he was in Boston, where he was only averaging like 1 to 2 assists per game, but when you watched him play, the impact felt more like a 5 assists per game player, because the extra pass that leads to an assist is actually just as valuable as the assist itself. And that's how I view Ausar as a playmaker. I do think if you extend his role as a playmaker, he could be a 5+ assist per game guy. But I think the guy that doesn't put up the big assist numbers, but clearly is a more impactful passer than the numbers suggest, I feel like that's the most realistic outcome for him. And he's also one of the best non-big rebounders in the NBA. His offensive rebounding percentage, which is an estimate of available rebounds a player grabbed while on the floor, was top 25 in the league during his rookie season, ahead of guys like Giannis, Wemby, and Mobley. And this season, he ranks top 15 in the league, ahead of guys like Cat and AD. While he's only averaging 4.8 rebounds per game on paper, that is due to a minutes decrease. As a rookie, he averaged 6.4 rebounds per game and 25.1 minutes per game. Per 75 possessions as a rookie, that was at 9.2 rebounds per game. This season, he's averaging 21.4 minutes per game, and per 75 possessions, he's averaging 8.1 rebounds per game. I do think he can be a double-digit rebound per game player in some seasons, but he likely is a high 7s, low 8s rebound per game player throughout his career. And this is valuable not just because it looks cool in a box score, but because he's creating opportunities. On the defensive glass, he can grab and go, creating opportunities in transition. And on the offensive glass, he is creating more possessions for his team. But I think his true calling card is his defense. In his rookie season, he was in the 93rd percentile in defensive estimated plus minus, which estimates defensive impact per 100 possessions. For context, the only other rookies in the 90th or higher percentile in his rookie class were Victor Wembanyama and Ausar Thompson. And this season, Ausar is in the 99th percentile in defensive estimated plus minus. In fact, he is second in the NBA behind only Alex Caruso. Now, I'm not here to say that Ausar Thompson is the second best defensive player in the NBA right now. But what I am here to say is that when you combine the defensive impact numbers with the numbers you see in the box score, even if they don't look great because of the minutes, when you look at like the per 36 and per 75 numbers, he puts up really productive box score defensive numbers. And also just watching him play, I do think he's a legit top 10 defensive player in the world right now. And I would argue he might be top 5, or at least trending that way. He has athleticism and physicality that can't be taught, and it allows him to do things on defense that nobody else can. He can legit defend 1 through 3s because he has the speed and quickness to match up with the smaller guards. Even if it's not perfect, I would say, I do think he can hold his own for the most part, and he can definitely more than hold his own on a lot of the wings in the NBA. And in certain matchups, he can match up on 4s. And I think overall he's a very switchable player, not a true 1 through 5 guy, but can hold his own on switches at times. And I think he's somebody that you look at and look at the athleticism and look at the intangibles, and you will project him long term to be the island defender, the guy you put on the opposing team's elite perimeter player. And that is incredibly valuable, and I don't think I really need to explain why. But he's so much more than that. He's engaged and focused in terms of off-ball defense, which I've said multiple times. I think your ability off-ball defensively is a much more telling indicator than your ability on the ball defensively, because that shows me you have the engagement level, you're locked in, you are aware of your surroundings. He plays passing lanes well, he can be a help side defender in many spots. I know the numbers this year are down, but he's also a very productive defensive player overall. He's somebody that can be a monster shot blocker and also be somebody that plays your passing lanes and has active hands. He really checks off every box actually look for defensively. I think he's going to be a staple on all defense teams. Every year he meets the 65 game requirement. I think he's going to be somebody that's perennially a top 10 defensive player in the world. I think many seasons you're probably talking about a top 5 defensive player at his best. Again, he's already a top 10 guy on defense, and it's only year 2. And I still think he has room to grow and get better. Ausar Thompson is a very interesting player. I do think there are concerns about his offense. The lack of shooting, the concerns about his self-creation. I do believe those are valid concerns. And for a normal player, these would be massive red flags. Not just in terms of how good they could be, but also their ability to last in the league. But the thing is, Ausar Thompson is not a normal player. He has athleticism you just can't teach, and it breaks the mold of what is required at his position in terms of being a positive impact player on the wing. He has things physically and athletically that can't be contained, and that's something that can mask for a lot of flaws as a player. I do think Ausar can grow as an offensive player. I don't think that's out of the cards. I think if he does grow as a shooter and creator, it will raise his ceiling overall as a player. But I also don't think he needs to be a good scorer to be a highly impactful player, because he's a great rebounder. He creates extra possessions for his team. He's a dominant scorer at the rim, at least in terms of his upside to get there. That's something he can realistically be. He can be maybe the best transition player in the NBA. He's effective as a connecting playmaker. But most importantly, his defense is so great that I think it compensates for any offensive drawbacks. Ausar may never be that 25 point per game scorer I think Brandon Miller can be. He may never be the primary playmaker that I think guys like Ausar Thompson or Scoot Henderson can be. But he's going to be a very good player for a very long time. In fact, I would go as far to say, while he may never put up the big numbers, he might have an impact that is equal to a 25 point per game scorer, or equal to somebody that's your primary playmaker, because he will do enough offensively combined with 99th percentile defense, and that is a combination that any team could want. If Detroit ever wins a title with this current core, the media will focus on Cade, and for good reason. Cade is awesome. I love Cade. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA. You guys know that by now. And it's also something that wouldn't be uncommon. They always do it. The stars are always the focus of the team that wins a title. But the fan bases of that team that wins it all, while they will focus on the stars and give them their flowers, they also will give just as much, if not more, flowers to the guys who have the impact that goes beyond the numbers. And I think Ausar Thompson will make a living off that for a very long time in the league. But that is the end of this video. If you made it to this point, thank you so much. Again, haven't already, like, subscribe, hit notification bell, notified whenever I release a video. I make videos about basketball, and if you enjoy basketball, I really think you're going to enjoy my content, and doing all those things are the best way to let YouTube, but more importantly myself, know that you enjoy the content, so I can make more of it in the future. Let me know what you think about Ausar Thompson. How good do you think he can be? Do you think he can win a Defensive Player of the Year? Where does he rank among the best defensive players in the league? Love to hear all of that in the comment section below. But with that being said, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.